The priest had just finished the final blessing at Daniel's graveside when a woman in navy stepped forward.
I am sorry to interrupt, but I am Daniel's legal wife. We were married 23 years. This woman, Susan, was the affair. I have the marriage license to prove it.
Mom, what is she talking about?
Susan did not flinch. She reached into her black handbag with practiced steadiness. From inside, she withdrew a worn brown leather folder and pressed it against her chest.
We have 2 adult children who deserve to know the truth. She has no right to stand there.
Mourners exchanged panicked glances. Someone gasped. Susan's eyes locked on Linda with unshakable calm. Her jaw set. She did not open it yet. She just held it, and the whole cemetery waited. Susan finally opened the leather folder. But before a single page appeared, Linda yanked a yellow document from her clutch and held it above her head.
This is my marriage license. Me and Daniel Jameson, dated June 14th, 1972. 23 years of marriage. He told me Susan was just a business arrangement. She was the secret, not me.
The mourners shifted. A woman near the back whispered bigamy, loud enough for everyone to hear.
That's a lie. Mom, tell them it's a lie.
Madam, I must ask you to lower your voice. This is a burial for heaven's sake.
Susan's hand did not shake. She slid her fingers into the folder, passed the first page, and found what she needed.
You see? She can't answer. She knows I am telling the truth, and she has nothing to say.
Let her exhaust herself. The truth doesn't need to shout.
Her fingertips touched the raised seal of a divorce decree. Daniel Reeves, 1976. She left it there, waiting for the right moment. Susan drew out the divorce decree. The raised seal caught the pale afternoon light.
Dissolution of marriage. Daniel Reeves and Patricia Reeves. Finalized March 3rd, 1976.
That was after my wedding. Daniel and I stood at that altar in 72. Your paper changes nothing.
Silent, Susan slid another document from the folder, a marriage license, fresh and official.
This is our marriage license. June 7th, 1981. Over 5 years after the divorce.
9 years newer than mine. The older marriage is the one courts recognize first.
Faces in the crowd shifted. The priest's hand trembled on his prayer book. Susan placed the 2 certificates side by side, her expression unreadable. The mourners stared at the 1981 seal, then at Linda's yellowed paper, their confusion deepening. Linda's voice rose, claiming priority by seniority. But the leather folder still held its secret. Susan closed the leather folder halfway and tilted her head toward Linda, her voice cutting through the November chill.
Let me see the license you are waving.
Linda's arm snapped back, then forward, the paper trembling as she thrust it toward Susan. Susan took it without looking away from Linda's face, then finally let her gaze drop to the document.
Daniel Jameson, not Reeves. Why would a man use 2 names, Linda?
He had a falling out with his people. He went by Jameson for a while. It was still my Daniel.
Susan's lips pressed together, and the crowd heard something final in the silence that followed. She placed Linda's license on top of her own, then reached back into the folder, her fingers brushing another page.
23 years of belief, built on a borrowed name. He let her believe it.
The mourners leaned forward. The real story was about to come out. From the same folder, Susan drew a name change petition, creased and stamped.
In 1975, Daniel Jameson legally petitioned to reclaim his birth name, Reeves. It was never a secret.
Linda's hand flew to her throat. Her children stepped forward, stone-faced.
He never told me. He said we'd always be Jameson.
Rachel grabbed Michael's arm. The 2 exchanged a look of dawning horror.
Mom, what else don't we know?
She's learning it right now, just like they are.
Susan set the petition beside Linda's license, the 2 names glaringly different.
Daniel Reeves was my husband. Daniel Jameson was a mask he wore for 5 years. He never told you, and I am sorry for that.
Linda's children turned to her, their faces no longer trusting.
Even if the name matched, Linda, Your 1972 marriage is void. Daniel didn't divorce Patricia until 1976.
He told me Patricia was long gone before we ever met. He swore it.
Mom, if there was a Patricia, then our whole childhood was built on a lie.
I didn't know about Patricia. He said he'd never been married before.
I can't listen to this. You are telling me we weren't even legitimate?
Gasps rippled through the mourners. The same woman near the back whispered bigamy. Once more, louder now.
The decree is dated 1976. Your license is 1972. That makes your marriage void from the start.
But he lived under my roof for 23 years. We had a home, birthdays.
Was our father even really Daniel Reeves? Or did we belong to a ghost?
Linda had no answer. Her children stepped back, a visible gap opening between them and their mother. Susan reached into the folder once more and drew out a thick document, its pages bound with a metal grommet.
There is one more document. The prenuptial agreement Daniel and I signed in 1981.
She held it open, and the embossed notary seal caught the gray light, unmistakable.
A prenup, that proves nothing. He could have signed anything you put in front of him.
This was filed in the Connecticut Superior Court the day before our wedding. It was never contested.
She began to read aloud, her voice steady and clear, reaching the last row of mourners.
I, Daniel Reeves, hereby swear that I am not currently married to any person under any name, and have no legal impediment to this marriage.
The words fell like stones into still water. Even the breeze seemed to stop.
He was a liar. He lied to both of us. Don't you see?
Susan lowered the prenup, her eyes still on Linda. The folder was almost empty, but its final page waited.
You think a signed paper changes 23 years? He held my hand at the kitchen table and called me his wife.
He called you many things, Linda. But in a court of law, he called me his only wife.
Mom, stop. Just stop. You are making it worse.
I can't do this. I can't listen anymore.
I must ask everyone to lower their voices. We are still standing over a grave.
You are all believing her. He was my life. He was everything.
The mourners stood frozen, their eyes darting from Linda to Susan, then to the children pulling away.
Mrs. Jameson, I must ask you to step back and allow Mrs. Reeves to finish.
Linda's children now stood several feet from her, a hard distance that had nothing to do with cemetery grass. Susan's hand rested on the last page inside the folder, waiting for the noise to quiet.
Daniel Reeves and I were legally married on June 7th, 1981. There is no legal record of a marriage between him and Linda Jameson.
You told us we were legitimate heirs. You lied about everything.
He was my husband. I gave him children, and you are telling me it was all a lie?
Rachel turned her back on Linda, sobbing into her cupped hands. The mourners stared, mouths open. The priest stepped forward, his prayer book pressed to his chest.
We must finish this burial now.
We're leaving. I can't even look at you right now.
Please, don't go. You are all I have.
Linda collapsed to her knees in the wet grass, her navy dress pooling, while her children stared, unmoving. Susan closed the leather folder, her gaze set on the open grave, not on the woman crumpled before it.
The burial will finish now, Mrs. Reeves. A moment more.
Linda's sobs diminished into ragged breaths. Rachel, still weeping, took her mother's arm and pulled her upright.
Let's get her to the car. We're done here.
The three moved slowly away from the grave, Linda's heels dragging in the grass. No one from the crowd followed. Emily rushed forward and threw her arms around Susan, burying her face against her mother's black blouse.
I am so sorry I ever doubted you for a second.
You didn't. You just listened to your heart. That's never wrong.
The priest resumed the committal, his voice low. The cemetery workers began lowering the casket while the small crowd remained. One by one, mourners filed past Susan, pressing her hand, their words of condolence heavy with unspoken awe. Then the last car pulled away, and Susan stood alone at the filled grave, the leather folder still pressed against her side. Susan drove them home through the fading light, Emily silent in the passenger seat, eyes fixed on her hands.
Mom, I can't sit still. I need to take a walk, clear my head.
Go, honey. I'll be right here when you are ready.
Emily hugged her mother once more and slipped out the front door. The latch clicked, and the house fell silent. Susan lowered herself onto the couch and placed the worn leather folder on the cushion beside her. From the end table, she picked up a framed photograph of Daniel, taken 5 years ago on their anniversary.
All this pain because you couldn't live one honest life, Daniel. But Rachel and Michael didn't choose any of this. They're victims, too.
Something shifted in her expression. The grief didn't leave, but a quiet resolve settled over it. She knew what she had to do next, and it had nothing to do with revenge. Susan picked up the phone and called her attorney, her voice low and measured.
I need you to contact Rachel and Michael Jameson. Tell them I want to meet, privately.
She pulled a sheet of stationery from the desk and wrote 2 short letters, the nib scratching in the silence.
This won't come from Daniel's estate. It will come from me. They didn't ask for this.
She folded each letter precisely and sealed them inside matching cream envelopes. Rising, she crossed to her desk, slid open the top drawer, and placed the leather folder inside with the documents still tucked within. She closed the drawer and left the checkbook out. Her personal account, untouched by Daniel's estate. Susan moved to the window and stared out at the quiet street, the first stars appearing above the trees.
They deserve a fresh beginning. I can give them that, at least.
The envelopes waited on the coffee table, stamped and ready, holding the first step towards something that looked nothing like revenge. 2 weeks of silence passed before Susan parked outside a small coffee shop on Market Street. The overcast sky unchanged. Rachel and Michael sat at a corner booth, untouched mugs in front of them. Their eyes tracked Susan as she entered.
I asked to see you, not your mother. Thank you for coming.
We almost didn't. After the funeral, we weren't sure what you could possibly want.
Not forgiveness and not an apology, just a conversation. What happened was not your fault.
Our whole childhood feels like a lie. We don't even know who we are anymore.
You are 2 people who were kept in the dark by someone who should have known better. I am not here to punish you for his choices.
Then, why are you here?
Susan folded her hands on the table, her gaze moving from Michael to Rachel. Steady and unhurried, both siblings leaned forward, still guarded, but no longer ready to bolt.
Our mother hasn't stopped crying since the funeral. She won't eat. You destroyed her.
Daniel let her believe a lie. I am sorry he did that to her, and to you. It was cruel, and none of it was your fault.
So we're not even his real children then. Just a mistake he left behind.
You are his children, in every way that mattered to him. But that doesn't mean you deserve to suffer.
She reached into the black leather handbag she'd carried at the funeral, her movements deliberate. She drew out 2 cream envelopes and placed them on the table between the coffee cups. Michael and Rachel stared at the envelopes, then back at Susan, their mistrust beginning to crack.
I don't expect anything from you. I just needed you to have this.
Her fingers rested on the envelopes, but she did not push them forward yet. Susan slid both envelopes across the worn wood of the table, one toward each of them.
Each envelope holds a check for $50,000. From my own funds, not Daniel's estate. I want you to have something to move forward, because you didn't ask for any of this.
Rachel's mouth fell open. Michael's hand twitched on the tabletop, but he didn't reach. With a deep breath, Michael picked up his envelope, his jaw tight. He tore the seal and pulled out the check. His fingers trembled.
$50,000. This is real.
Rachel stared at her own envelope, then slowly slid her finger under the flap, tears welling. Silence filled the booth, broken only by the quiet hum of the coffee machines.
I am not buying your silence. I ask for nothing. It's just a start.
We can't accept this. It feels like we don't deserve it.
He's right. We're not your responsibility.
You are not his debt, but you are his legacy. Let this be a door, not a handout. Build something good. That's all I ask. I won't contact Linda, but I'll always be glad to know you are okay.
Rachel nodded, fresh tears spilling. Michael exhaled shakily and slid the check into his pocket. Susan rose, smoothing her blouse, and looked at them for a long, quiet moment. Then she turned toward the door, leaving her own coffee untouched. Outside, she paused on the sidewalk, the overcast sky finally breaking into a thin rain. Inside, the siblings sat motionless, 2 checks in their hands, and a future they hadn't seen coming. Months later, on a warm spring morning, Susan returned to the cemetery alone. The grass over Daniel's grave had grown thick and green, fresh flowers already leaning against the headstone. In her hand, she carried a single white rose, the stem wrapped in damp paper.
You left a mess, Daniel. 23 years of it, but I cleaned it up. The children are safe. That's what matters. I did what I could for them. For all of us.
She bent and laid the white rose beside the chrysanthemums, her fingers resting for a moment on the cool granite. Then she straightened, and for a long moment she stood still, the breeze ruffling the tips of her silver hair.
I loved you, but I am glad you are gone.
Without another word, she turned and walked back toward the parking lot, leaving the grave without looking back. The white rose lay alone against the stone. The last piece of a story only she knew how to finish. At her car, she stood still for a moment, one hand on the door. She didn't look back. The leather folder lay in the trunk, unopened since the burial. She drove home in silence, the miles slipping away like the last threads of an old knot. When she pulled into her driveway, the house was dark, except for the porch light Emily had left on. She retrieved the leather folder from the trunk and carried it into the study without breaking its seal. She opened the bottom drawer of the old oak desk and placed the folder inside, on top of the yellowed papers she had never thrown away. Her fingers rested on the worn cover for a count of 5. Then she slid the drawer shut. Susan exhaled. The glass of water on the desk caught the last light from the window.
No more lies to untangle. No more lives to protect.
Then she walked to the window and stood there, watching the moon rise over the bare October trees. Susan left the window and climbed the stairs to her bedroom, the house silent behind her. In front of the old oak-framed mirror, she paused, her reflection unchanged since the burial. She unpinned the small gold mourning brooch and rested it on the dresser with care. Then the Baroque pearl earrings came off, one at a time, laid beside the brooch. She lifted the single strand of pearls over her head and coiled it next to the earrings. She looked at her reflection and pulled out the first hairpin. Pin by pin, her silver bob loosened, falling into soft waves around her face. In the glass, a woman stared back, older but unburdened. And then, for the first time since the funeral, Susan smiled, genuinely. She never wore the brooch or the pearls again. They had served their purpose. Linda moved out of state that spring. No one heard from her again. Rachel and Michael used the $50,000 to lease a small bookstore near the coast, a quiet place with morning light. They sent Susan a thank you card on plain cream stock, no return address. Susan read it once, then propped it on the mantel beside the old clock. She never replied, but she didn't throw it away either. In town, the story of the funeral became a quiet legend, told in lowered voices at the diner. They said a woman in navy had tried to steal a grave and a widow had stopped her with a folder of paper. By autumn, the attention faded, but the blue spruce beside Daniel's plot grew another 6 inches. Susan continued her quiet life. Garden, books, occasional lunch with Emily. The thank you card stayed on the mantel, unopened since the first reading, a silent reminder that grace can outlast revenge. A year to the day after the funeral, Susan returned. The sky was a high, cloudless blue, and the air smelled of fresh-cut grass. She carried nothing, no folder, no flowers, just her hands clasped loosely in front of her.
Rest, Daniel. It's over.
She touched the cool granite with her fingertips, then let her hand fall. For a long moment, she simply stood, her shadow pooling on the grass. Then she turned, taking a few steps before she stopped and looked back once. Her face held no tears, no tightness, just peace. She walked on, her figure growing smaller against the wide lawn until she passed through the cemetery gate. The headstone stayed behind, warmed by the sun, bearing only a name and a story no one would ever fully know. And Susan Reeves kept walking. Sometimes the truth hides in a leather folder, held by a woman who knew her worth and never flinched. Susan buried her husband, but she also buried a lie that had lived for 23 years. With a handful of dated papers, she exposed the fiction Linda had built her entire life around. Then, with quiet grace, she helped the children of that lie find footing. She asked nothing in return. She simply opened a door and walked away. She never sought revenge, only justice with dignity. And when the dust settled, the woman in navy was just a footnote in a story Susan had already finished. The leather folder went into a drawer, the pearls into a box, the secret into the ground. All that remained was a woman who knew her worth, walking forward into the quiet of her own life. And the truth was hers all along.